Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Um, I'm happy today because I get to talk about my favorite subject in the world, which has to do with cybersecurity. It's a fun thing to talk about. And Salesforce has actually a rather unique stance on things when it comes to security. We really truly mean a shared responsibility in the sense that we partner. We partner with the customer, we partner with our partners, and our goal is to make every customer successful. And part of the success is that the data is protected and security is maintained and so on. Before I start, I just want to remind everyone I'm not selling anything to anybody today. And I'm a CTO, so I'm allowed to do that. So, but if you're thinking about purchasing anything, please do purchase from the generally available products. I was asked to introduce myself, so there you have it. So this is me. I am the security CTO at Salesforce. I've been at Salesforce for over 9 years now. It's been a while. It's fun. And it's a big goal that Salesforce is actually establishing and pushing for. I've been in security for decades, not years. I was in the early days of internet security, and I've seen this world grow. And migrating to the cloud is very important aspect of all of what we're going through these days. The work from anywhere is very important to what we're going through these days. So we actually focus a lot in the company about all of these security aspects. If you can see, the security landscape is actually changing. We're not fighting an enemy that we know what they got. It's a very interesting situation, actually. It doesn't happen very much. The attack surface changes. 2.5 years ago, give or take, everybody started to work from home or remotely, whatever remotely happens to be. And we changed how we run things because the security model in most organizations was based on the fact that we have offices and desks and IP addresses and things like this. And that world is basically gone. And because of what we went through, it's been 2 years plus, I think that world is actually gone forever. We are now targeting a world with workforce that is working from anywhere, that connections happen from anywhere to anywhere. Any individuals are connected. And it turns out that it actually suits how Salesforce runs things really well. But the attacks keep changing. People who are writing attacks or building attacks or mounting or throwing attacks at everyone are actually pretty smart. And they keep modifying things. They keep collaborating with each other. And we have to deal with all of this in today's economy. Obviously, we've seen a lot of data breaches. We've seen a lot of ransomware attacks. Ransomware, honestly, when it started, came out of nowhere, in the sense that the world was not prepared for an attack of that type. So we had to react to it and build defenses and build schemes to actually, help us deal with it in a much better way. But we still see the successful ransomware attacks, and it's growing, and it will continue to grow because the bad guys are making money, so they continue to do it. I talked about the remote work factor. Zero trust is one of those things that is a large framework, and I'll touch on it a little bit. But there is actually a difference in how we build a security program for an organization today versus even just 5 years ago. And it's because the endpoints are somewhere that we do not exactly know. Most of the workloads that we're running sit in a cloud someplace, and all of these connect with each other. So we cannot actually depend on the fact that a particular endpoint is guaranteed to be secure. We don't even know what that means anymore. So we have to deal with a situation like this at this point. the world has changed again because board of directors now talk about cybersecurity. It is not just a techie subject that technology people talk about. It is actually a board subject. The cybersecurity risk is very, very important and very difficult to actually quantify exactly. There's a lot of regulations that I have like 1% of the regulations here on the slide. This is not meant to be anything specific, but there's a lot of compliance, and compliance for verticals, compliance for geographies, compliance for industries, compliance because of cloud things, and the intersection of all of that is actually pretty difficult. And you know, part of the mission of the service provider, the cloud service providers and the SaaS service providers, is to help the customers maneuver through all of this. And at the center of everything is data. The really important thing, and it's the data could be sensitive data about individuals that we want to protect from, you know, going to places they're not supposed to. It could be sensitive data about financials, about healthcare, about governments, and all of that is basically at the center of attention. And you know, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to protect the data at a lot of different layers, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of layers that actually govern how we run things today. We cannot protect data if we do not know who can access what. And if you look at the Salesforce stack, there's a very rich basically access control stack that we would like to have every customer and every partner take advantage of. And it's really good when it's implemented correctly. And we would like to help everyone obviously maintain it and implement it correctly. So let me just spend some time here talking about how we run security at Salesforce. And when I say that, I'm actually not talking about securing Salesforce the enterprise. I'm talking about securing Salesforce the production sites. And by nature of it, we are a customer of ourselves. So actually, that also implies that's how we secure ourselves. But the security program at Salesforce was designed to protect all our customers. We have an infrastructure and a platform that is serves a lot of different customers with a lot of different needs. So in essence, the security posture has to satisfy everyone, sort of in the same way, because we run the same service for everyone. We built the strategy on these 4 pillars. If you actually look at breaches and what happens in the world, the number one cause of breaches is people. Whether it's somebody clicking on a link that they should not have, or somebody using the same password across different things. The culture is very, very important. And we, even within Salesforce, we continue to push for a culture that thinks about trust first. The number one goal is for customers and partners and the stakeholders to actually trust Salesforce and trust each other. And that takes quite a bit of effort. It is not simple because everybody's busy doing their thing every day. The next suite of things is we're calling here nail the basics. In the security world, people call it hygiene. And it's sort of the blocking and tackling part of security. It's, are things patched correctly? Are we running old versions of software that we should stop doing? Are people using passwords with good strength? Are we actually offering multi-factor authentication for our users? Are we collecting information from all the machines and servers and so on to be able to detect and defend against attacks? So all of that stuff basically lands in this first category, second category. And in essence, that's the higher priority in terms of technical project work. So every year we actually allocate the first chunk of funding to these projects, because patching never gets done. Multi-factor really does not ever get done. Single sign-on, all of these things need care and feeding from now until eternity, and we have to continue to fund these projects. And we promote that all people that work with us or work with others or any service providers, that they actually look at the blocking and tackling first. If we solve these problems, 90% of the attacks will not be successful. Now, we'll still end up with some sophisticated things, and we have to build other things too. But before that, the trusted innovation part is actually very important, because in a competitive market, all service providers have to compete. We have to satisfy the needs of our customers. We have to improve the products. And improving the products has features, has speed, has security, a lot of different aspects. So we support our development teams with security tooling and so on, so that they can develop their products, their features, while maintaining security. And that is actually a tough project. It's called SDLC, Secure Development Lifecycle. And many companies have their own versions of it. We have our own version of it. Yeah, and it depends on a lot of different aspects, but it's actually really important, because in the old days, developers would develop a product and then throw it to security at the end of the day, and security says, hey, these two things do not work. Go back and redo it. And sometimes it takes 6 months to redo things. So we do not want that to happen. We want the security and the engineering teams to actually partner. The raise the security bar is the fancy stuff. Can we detect that a user is doing something unusual? Because sometimes when it looks like a user is doing something unusual, it actually means that somebody else hacked the machine that the user is coming from, or anything of that type. So there is a lot of fancy things that we try to detect and manage through. And it's really important that we actually continue to advance things. We tell all our microservice designers and builders and owners that they have to authenticate their service to everyone. They have to encrypt the data between services. We have to adopt all the cloud service, the cloud security services that we actually are promoting in the world. Let me talk a little bit about zero trust, and I think there will be a complete presentation on zero trust later on. But zero trust is a philosophy first. The marketing words, I'm not a marketing guy, I'm a technology guy. So I like to talk about what we actually mean. And technically what it means is you have to assume that any single point in the entire ecosystem could in fact be infected. And that point could be an endpoint that a user has. It could be a server that we host. It could be some third-party things, because we connect to a lot of third parties to complete all the processing of the data that we need to do for our customers and partners. So if any one of these points could be infected, that means that we need the rest of the fabric to avoid that infection. And that's effectively where the zero trust ideas came from. That does not mean that it's free for all, because we want to actually restrict bad things as much as possible, so that when we have a bad situation, there are not thousands or millions of different possibilities that we need to maneuver through. So we, for example, do not allow any machine that is not Salesforce certified to touch Salesforce. That's for our own people. And that's kind of important to us, because that narrows down if there is an infected machine trying to touch the Salesforce infrastructure. We have encryption between machines for stored data and so on and so forth. And encryption is something that I spent some 40 years on. So it actually is sort of the backbone of security, if you wish. authentication and authorization, I don't need to say too much, but effectively we do, if we really do know who is accessing what with very high potential of understanding, then that access is probably okay. And then we narrow down the situations where it turns out that somebody actually left a machine in a coffee shop and somebody else is doing something with it. All of these other situations. But if everything is narrowed down, then we can actually focus on the things we need to correct. Agility is an important thing, and agility and compliance we put here in the same sentence because they generally do not go with each other. They go against each other, but they're both very important. Compliance is basically a business requirement. If we promise our customers that we are compliant with the XYZ regulation, we better be compliant. And by virtue of that, then we have to actually satisfy all the requirements, in spite of the fact that the work model has changed dramatically over the last 2 years. Quick detection is the name of the game here. So understanding the threats, understanding the world actually in terms of where the threats are and what may be coming our way, understanding how to cure something is very important for zero trust, because you cannot allow an infected endpoint anywhere if you're not detecting that endpoint is not acting correctly. And then the access model of all services, and Salesforce is the same. Sometimes it's easy for people to say, hey, I'm just going to give everybody access to everything because they will not bother me because they cannot do something. That is actually counter security. Exactly. That is exactly what security does not want. Privileged access, whether it's Salesforce people accessing our own production, or whether it's a customer with high level access into the Salesforce implementation, it's all the same to us. We need to actually narrow these down because that lets us understand who's doing what. And of course, early detection is the name of the game, because somebody will actually attack any infrastructure, and somebody will be successful at attacking any infrastructure, and it's our collective task to make sure that we detect that as early as possible so that we can stop it before any harm is done. Resilience is a very interesting word. I like to use it a lot. I'm leading into what the shared responsibility model really is for Salesforce. It is about the customer data. And we call it customer data because it is customer data. It's not, in fact, Salesforce data. So each customer needs to know what is important. Each customer needs to know what their policies are. Each customer needs to know what the risks are. We help the customer implement the processes they want to run their businesses, making things run smoothly, connecting to all the different aspects of how you get access to data and so on. But at the end of the day, there are certain things that you cannot outsource, which is what the risk is. So it is important that each customer understands what the data is, where the important things are, and share with each other. We are not going to be able to defend against these attacks one at a time. We actually have to be a collective group of people that share things. In the sense, even if Salesforce sees something unusual, somebody's attacking something, we actually call the customer and say, wait, well, this doesn't belong here. Is this intentional? And sometimes we can stop things from causing any harm by talking early. It's all about partnerships. And it's multi-partnerships because there's no one entity that can solve all of this at any point in time. This is an interesting slide for people who have been using Salesforce. You may recognize the circles on the bottom. These are the different services that we offer to our customers. We call them clouds, as probably people know now. And what we want to achieve is a common security control framework, as in, if a customer bought 2 or 3 or 8 of these different services, we want the control of all the security features across to be the same, so that I can find the vulnerabilities across these machines. I can manage the identity the same way. I can detect bad events the same way. And certifications have to be common. Now, keep in mind, Salesforce adds services by acquisitions. I don't think that's a secret. And some of these acquisitions take a bit of time to actually come across and manage security the same way Salesforce wants to. So some of these things take a little bit of time. But our goal is always that the security controls are, in fact, the same, not just similar. And it's very important they're the same, because if we have different technologies managing security in the same way, we need to just collect data in a different ways, and the amount of work we need to do is just not going to be possible. So it is important that we do this. There is kind of the funny friction between engineering and security in these cases. But the requirement is basically the requirement at the end of the day. Let me just spend a little bit of time, and I will end soon here, on what we mean by shared responsibility. We as Salesforce, we build a lot of security tooling inside of the infrastructure, inside of the cloud, inside of the platform itself, and inside the applications that we sell. But at the end of the day, every implementation of Salesforce is different, because the implementation of Salesforce is a business, satisfies the business of the target customer. And we do not own that. We do not know what the data is that lives inside of a customer implementation. We do not know what the actual configuration is unless the customer is sharing the configuration with us. We don't actually have access to that. So we do need the shared model. We offer a lot of tooling. We have a lot of different products that customers can add on top to manage the security of the overall implementation. But at the end of the day, the customer is in fact responsible. And of course, we have partnerships with many companies that can come and help with making things more secure and advance the security in the implementations and so on. But it is a partnership in the sense that I personally get calls from customers saying, I don't know if my implementation is secure or not. And we actually work with them to make sure that they are convinced that their implementation is correct and secure. I get this other question almost all the time. As human beings, we want silver bullets. If you want to go back to your board or your CEO and you want to say something, generally we want to deliver silver bullets. And unfortunately, security does not come in that flavor. There's never going to be a silver bullet that answers all security questions, but it is actually true that if I get the question, so tell me one thing I need to do to help my security posture, my answer is almost always get rid of passwords. Multi-factor authentication is the simplest form. That's what we offer. And that's what we are asking every Salesforce customer to actually do. Whether you use what's built in, these are built into Salesforce products directly, you can just turn it on. If the customer has their own SSO or some other MFA, please go do it. And we want everyone to, this is not a 90% anymore. When MFA is completely adopted, and I'm talking about that the Salesforce ecosystem, but adopted in general to access services in the cloud, the number of attacks will go down tremendously. We look into all breaches and all attacks and try to understand what was successful, why did this attack succeed. 90-some% have to do with a password. It's amazing what you actually see when you see all the data. And if these passwords were not easy to guess or were not the same as the user used somewhere else or whatever, all the bad password habits that we know about, we can actually cut down a lot on the breaches. That does not mean that the attackers will stop, but it actually will slow them down, because if they have to go through a tight infrastructure with a lot of different checking, it will take a lot longer to get access to sensitive data. And that would help us, us meaning the collective of the entire Salesforce ecosystem, defend things better and catch things earlier. And basically we'll be running a much better ecosystem at that point. There just aren't enough security aware people in the world. What can I say? So awareness goes in different levels. We want 100% of the population to understand their duties. Please do not use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a password. And you might be surprised as how many passwords actually look like that. It's just not fun. So awareness for everyone is very important. The individuals who are building the applications are actually very important, because if these applications are tight, and if they have been trained to write secure web apps, the opportunity of an attacker goes way down. And then how the actual implementation is managed. Does the customer understand the identities of all the the users, and do the users have the correct access or have too much access that you don't need? That is collectively how you increase the security of everything. And we've actually partnered with the World Economic Forum and basically developed this for free to everyone in the world. I will not have time to go through all of this, but there's a lot of different offerings that Salesforce has. The security health check and so on, these are free things. There's a number of extra products that we can offer depending on what the customer needs. And please do take advantage of all of this, and do take advantage of all the partners that we have to actually make sure that the overall implementation is in fact secure. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate the time that everybody allocated to this. And we might have a couple of minutes for questions.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And that was a lot of great content. So I am actually going to ask one quick question from the audience. So this one is, what is the best way to prevent a breach from happening?
I mean, there is no silver bullet, but it's if you look at how breaches happen, it's do you have vulnerabilities in the software that you have? Do you have multi-factor authentication enabled for anybody that accesses anything, whether it's an end user or an engineer accessing production or a developer building? So the authentication of users is very important. Making sure that the vulnerabilities are patched and up to date is very important. And that will actually not prevent, but actually trim down, will mitigate a lot, will slow down any possible attack. And that will give the teams time to detect. So the third part is detecting unusual behavior. So that combination is how do you defend against a breach, and work with the partners, because some of the data lives in Salesforce, and some of the data lives on-prem, and some of the data lives in some other party. So the overall program needs to look at wherever the data is.
All right, amazing. So we do have a few other questions. We have quite a few actually. So we're going to make sure that gets sent over to you, Taher, and team for any follow-up. And I think we're going to go ahead and move on to our poll. Thank you so much. I just want to thank you again for your time and for that amazing presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed being here, and I actually look forward to reading the emails and the questions. I will, in fact, do that.
Awesome.